Hey there, everyone. This is Average Joe. Before we start today's podcast, I have to kind of give a little public service announcement. When we sat down to record this week, I made a mistake with the setup. So basically, the audio quality for this week's episode is going to be really off. And unfortunately, just with the scheduling of ourselves and our time, we just couldn't get together to redo it. So I beg your patience. I think this is a great conversation we had about the new Spider-Man movie. And it's basically going to sound as if we're talking through water or something, because I forgot to plug in one of the important cables that's necessary for the microphones to be picked up by the computer. So I just wanted to let you guys know in advance that this week's episode will sound not the best, and I just ask for your patience with that. And we'll make sure that in the future we don't make the same mistake again. But like I said, do your best, and hopefully you'll enjoy this week's episode.
So as we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, we have to give the power of the podcast to the other guy who will be regularly co-hosting the show, since Ben the Movie Buff isn't here and the other guy is here. This power store has been holding on to the power for a few weeks now, so it's finally time to deliver it to Dr. What. Now, Dr. What, I know you've been on the show before, but this is a big commitment. Are you ready for this?
I am definitely.
All right, so I'm going to give you the power sword. There you go.
Wow, I feel semi-powerful, but Ben the Movie Buff has the rest of that power, I guess, eh?
Yeah, so you guys each have like 50% of podcast power.
If we get together, if both him and I are on the podcast, will it be like Voltron and like we'll be ultra powerful because we can combine powers and like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts?
Something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with an expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Dr. What, and I'm a total nerd, but you wouldn't guess it if you met me. I have interests in physics, math, history, and of course medicine.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses
by putting it all under the microscope. Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, manga, comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Nintendo, Cinematic Universes, Marvel, DC, Justice League, is Batman, Leagues with Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain Jaws, Loki, Spider-Man, and Hulk, and Logan, X-Men, Battlers, and Galaxy Guardians, Star Trek, Trick, Card, and Janeway, Nerds and Geeks come gather around, join them in the Big Bat Jar.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope.
Indeed.
Just indeed. That's your opening
Indeed.
line.
I guess. You know what? That was lacking. You know what? For my first entrance as a regular co-host, should have been something a little bit more epic, I guess. Eh?
Especially since you're a doctor, you've probably used a microscope before.
Well, yeah.
I'm guessing that's part of
times.
Doctor training. It's like you just.
Yeah, you do it a lot. Not anymore, but yeah, back during my training I did it.
I don't think I've ever actually used an actual
Seriously?
microscope. Maybe like once in like high school
biology.
It's been so long I can't even remember what the class was called.
You've forgotten how to spoke.
Yes, exactly. So as you would have heard in our cold open, and I swear we're going to stop doing those. We're not like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something.
Right.
But as you heard in that cold open, we now have Dr. What as a full-time host of the podcast.
I'm here.
So, Dr. What, it's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
And I think it's very fitting that your first episode as a full-time host is talking about Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah.
Because
we saw Spider-Man Homecoming together.
Yes, and your first appearance on the podcast was to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming.
No, first time on the podcast was to talk about Spider-Man, the Clone Saga.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that came first. I'm
All
pretty
right.
certain that came first. Or which one came first? I don't know. Anyways, you can go back and look later.
Well, yeah, I'm willing to bet $10, 10 podcast dollars.
I will take that bet.
That the Spider-Man Homecoming episode came first. And just for the sake of the narrative I'm trying to spin here, I think that's what we'll go with.
I know. I'm kind of becoming the Spider-Man guy. I like it. I'll be that guy.
So it's very fitting that you're here because you were indeed part of the podcast when we talked about the film that preceded this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know because of that experience and your Clone Saga episode that you are indeed a Spider-Man fan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very fitting that you're here for today's conversation. Now, we're recording it ahead of time, so we're not going to do any news because we just get to talking right about this movie.
Fair enough.
So first of all, one of the things that you and I talked about when we talked about Spider-Man Homecoming is that we both really liked the movie.
Loved it.
But in that episode we kind of acknowledged the challenge that the Spider-Man Homecoming movie had, because it was coming in as essentially the second reboot of the Spider-Man film series.
Mm-hmm.
And we were acknowledging the very fact that Spider-Man Homecoming had to kind of be different than the other movies. And so it kind of was, I would say, stymied from pursuing story elements that would make it the definitive Spider-Man because of the fact that there had been two different film series beforehand.
Absolutely. Well, you can't tell the story of Uncle Ben dying a third time when they had Andrew Garfield. How many years previous?
Would have been 5 years before that.
Yeah, like it's still fresh in people. So they couldn't do that story again. And I actually appreciate it because that reboot, sort of the Amazing Spider-Man, it was good for them to actually get away from and to go with Tom Holland. But it was still fresh in people's mind that there was another Spider-Man out there.
Yes, I think this makes for a very unique situation in filmmaking. The fact that this is the second movie in a series. Like, this is the second Spider-Man movie, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because both the Tobey Maguire-led Spider-Man films and the Andrew Garfield-led Spider-Man films got to at least two movies.
Yeah.
And so now we're at the second of the Tom Holland-led Spider-Mans.
Right. Are they planning on doing a third Spider-Man movie?
Well, that's actually something I wanted to talk about, because back in 2015, when it seemed as though the future of Spider-Man in movies was in a very dark and bleak place,
Mm-hmm.
of course, this was right after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 had come out.
Right.
Now, I don't know if have you seen The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yes, yeah, the one with, was it Cuba Gooding Jr. in that?
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx. Yes, I get those guys confused. Anyways, yeah, no, it was not a good movie. With Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stefani. Not Gwen Stefani, Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, so it was especially concerning for me because The Amazing Spider-Man 2 repeated the same mistakes that Spider-Man 3 had made 7 years prior.
What were those?
It was mainly related to overstuffing the film with too many storylines, too many
villains,
characters,
yeah.
too many villains, and so the film itself became crowded and it felt unfocused, and really, especially with Amazing Spider-Man 2, it wasn't so much the thing with Spider-Man 3, but in Amazing Spider-Man 2, they were, half the time they had in the movie was dedicated to setting up future films. Because at that point, Sony was planning a Sinister Six movie, they were planning a Black Cat movie, they were talking about this Young Aunt May movie. So there were like all these threads that they were...
Young Aunt May?
Yeah.
How could you make that interesting?
Well, you know, there's ways they've done it in the comics where it's like a teen romantic whatever.
Okay.
I think they were also going to go the angle that she was like a S.H.I.E.L.D. spy, or they couldn't have done S.H.I.E.L.D., but they were like a spy of sorts.
Okay, yeah.
They were, because at that point they were desperate. They wanted to make sure they kept making Spider-Man movies.
Because they didn't want to lose the rights back to Marvel Studios.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
So Amazing Spider-Man 2, more so than Spider-Man 3, overstuffed the film with too many plots.
Okay, who were the villains in that movie, in Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Well, so you had Electro.
Yeah, of course.
Then you had the Rhino.
He showed up at for 10 seconds in the last scene movie.
Well, he was in the beginning as well.
Okay, yeah.
And then you had the Harry Osborn Green Goblin.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, fair enough.
And then you also had the whole storyline about his dad and the train car lab.
Right.
The mystery of Peter's parents.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Anyway, I'm getting off track. But 2015 was a scary time for Spider-Man fans because we're like, the studio doesn't know what they're doing. They literally made the same mistake they made previously, and we don't know what the next Spider-Man movie is going to look like. Like, what is Amazing Spider-Man 3 going to look like now? Because at that point, Amazing Spider-Man 2 had become like the lowest grossing Spider-Man movie.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, because Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, and Topher Grace, and who else?
That doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Like, that one actually even though it was a bust, it sucked. It still had one of the highest openings ever for a Spider-Man movie, right?
Yeah, because there was so much positive energy coming off of Spider-Man 2.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, 2015 was a scary time. And then a beam of light came in. I remember sitting at my desk at my job, surfing the internet because I was a bad employee, and Googling, comic book movie news when I'm supposed to be doing work. I don't work there anymore, so if anyone who I used to work for is listening to this, I spent work hours looking at movie news sites. I'm sorry.
And now Average Joe is an excellent model employee.
Oh,
yes, you would never do that.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, all I have to say, the news broke in early 2015 that Marvel Studios, the people who are making the MCU a thing, were going to partner with Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures to co-produce and share the Spider-Man character. This was unprecedented because at the time, it seemed as though we were just accepting the fact that the Fox people owned X-Men and Fantastic Four, and we were never going to see them as part of the rest of the MCU. Spider-Man and Ghost Rider were owned by Sony, and we were never going to see them crossing over. And it really seemed like as long as they just keep pumping out movies, doesn't mean if they're good or not, we'll never see these characters cross over.
Mm-hmm.
And when this news broke, I was like, wow, wow, wow. Like, yes, like, let me see Spider-Man join the rest of the Marvel characters in movies.
So you knew about that even before the trailer for Captain America Civil War came?
Oh, yeah, and most people who were, like, in the know knew.
Okay, see, I had no idea that Spider-Man was going to show up in the MCU until I saw that trailer. And that is such an epic scene in that trailer when you have Spider-Man with Captain America's shield. And then they actually have the animated eyes for Spider-Man, which is, of course, everyone picked up on it right away. It's a callback to the animated series.
Well, and the comic
And the
books
comics,
themselves.
true, yeah.
So when that deal was announced in 2015, it was going to be it was a 5-picture deal.
Okay.
So they said that there was going to be 5 movies in which either produced by Sony, where essentially all the MCU characters would appear in Sony movies, or Spider-Man would be allowed to appear in MCU movies.
Dang, so we're at 4.
No, this is the 5th one.
5th one, okay.
Okay, so you had
Captain
Civil War.
Oh, no, yeah, you're right, 5.
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
And this one, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh, okay, but they wasted it in, like, Avengers Endgame, because he's in it for, like,
Well,
one scene.
I guess
No, sorry, spoilers.
Well,
It's not much of a spoiler.
Well, yeah, but the point is, like, I should say at this point, we can't really. Spider-Man Far From Home is set after the events of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to talk about this movie at all without spoiling Avengers Endgame. So if you have not seen Avengers Endgame, I'm sorry. This is kind of like the point where you have to check out and come back after you've seen Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, it's really hard not to talk about, even a little.
Yeah. So just trucking along right here. Yeah, like he's in Endgame for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it still counts as one of the movies.
Yeah.
And so what you have now is like this with this film, Far From Home. This is the 5th and final movie of that original Sony Marvel agreement.
Okay.
So after this movie, there hasn't been anything announced officially to say that this partnership will continue.
Right.
And we'll talk about how the movie ends and how it certainly sets up future storylines that hopefully we'll see. But we have to accept the fact that this might be the last time we see Spider-Man in the MCU.
Wow.
And there's a lot of subtle things I don't think people pick up on that show that you can tell the difference between if he's in a Sony-produced movie or a MCU movie. For one thing, if you look at like the posters or the DVD cases for the MCU movies that he's in, you don't see him very well. Like he's not on the Civil War materials anywhere.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I've never seen him on it.
In Infinity War, he's on the poster, but he's obscured in shadows, so you can barely tell it's him unless you're like looking right at him.
Huh.
And he's obviously on the poster for Endgame.
Right. Yeah.
And even in like the Marvel Studios opening credits, he's not in it, except in Spider-Man: Homecoming and Far From Home, because like those are like the Sony produced MCU movies. So like those are the ones that want to remind you, look, it's Spider-Man, he's in here.
Yeah.
But the other ones don't show him at all.
Okay.
I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
No, I've not noticed that at all. So, what is the point behind all that? It's just that at the end, like the Marvel Studios produced ones, the MCU Disney stuff, they don't want him too front and center.
I think it's either that or he's not allowed to be using them. For instance, like he's allowed to physically appear in the film, but he's not allowed to be like part of the marketing or part of.
Yeah, like so Disney is not allowed to use Spider-Man to sell their movie. So
Yeah.
like, okay.
So like he's obviously like he's in the trailers and he's in the movies, but in terms of like promotional materials, they really limit of stuff you see of him.
Okay, so but you're saying that these Sony produced movies. So Sony produced both Homecoming and Far From Home.
And Marvel Studios co-produced these films with them.
Right. Because Sony does not have a great track record. Not great.
With movies in general, or with Spider-Man movies?
Lately Spider-Man movies.
Well, I mean, we just had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is...
That's true. That was arguably one of the best Spider movies.
Not arguably, it is one of the best Spider-Man movies.
I would put it like higher than the live action.
That's what I mean. It's arguably one of the best.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So as of late, their track record's been pretty good, but yeah, like they have kind of a spotty history.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, like, I don't know if this is making sense to people who are listening, but from a business perspective, like, the Marvel Studios branding, when they produce a movie, they're the only ones with creative control. They're the only ones involved. Kevin Feige, as the president of Marvel Studios, is the one person credited as a producer on every MCU movie. Like, they have a lot of freedom and creative control over their movies, with the exception of Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, because these are co-produced by Sony.
Okay, now, is this deal, this strange deal, are they going to start going back to it just being like Sony only making these movies? Or, I mean, Disney is becoming a juggernaut. Can they somehow buy those rights?
Apparently, okay, so like we've told the story on the podcast before that Marvel sold away all the movie rights to their characters when they were going bankrupt.
Yeah.
But apparently, in the case of Spider-Man, not only did they sell away the movie rights to Sony, but they actually sold away some of the rights to the character. So they actually Sony, I should say, has more control over Spider-Man than other studios have over other characters. And because Spider-Man movies have been like the biggest earner, like if you look at the listing of Sony Pictures films and their highest grossers, the Spider-Man movies are like at the top, and then it's everything else they've done.
Yeah.
So the woman I follow on YouTube the most when it comes to kind of like movie industry stuff, she's convinced that Sony will never give away total control of the Spider-Man character because they have so much invested in it. But they're seeing from a business perspective how working with Marvel Studios has been to their benefit, because it allows them to basically like rent out Spider-Man for the Marvel films and say like free marketing basically for our films.
Yeah.
By here Tom Holland, be in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and then bring people back to the movies we make.
Yeah.
And then by the same token, it's like, here's our movie. Okay, like let's bring over Samuel L. Jackson, Robert Downey Jr. Let's bring over these actors who are really popular in your movies, and we're gonna make sure that they're co-stars in our film.
Right. Okay.
In fact, I can't be sure about this, but I'm pretty positive that the main reason why Peter Parker has such a close relationship with Tony Stark in the MCU is because Sony, in the negotiating, wanted to make sure that they would get Robert Downey Jr. to be a part of their movies.
Oh, okay, because bring over some of the star power from the MCU.
Exactly.
Because the biggest character in the MCU is Tony Stark. Tony Stark.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that like so much of the creative decisions are based on business and whatever, but
I think it worked though. I think honestly, not having Uncle Ben and having Tony Stark kind of take on that Uncle Ben mantle of being a mentor and kind of being like a father figure and a guide, I think that actually is almost better.
I wouldn't. No.
No? Okay, fair enough.
As a hardcore Spider-Man fan, it was an issue I had with Homecoming and with the MCU version of Spider-Man in general. And I know there's a lot of people who feel the same way, that having Peter Parker be so attached to Iron Man and have so much of his motivation, his presence be associated with Tony Stark takes away his agency as a character. Because Spider-Man is a character who, for the most part, does it all for himself. He doesn't have like a rich benefactor who gives him the things he needs.
I'd agree. I would agree with that. I'd agree that it's some of the things that you like about Spider-Man is that he's a scrappy little kid. He makes his own costume. He makes his own web slinging. He's inventive. He's a bit of a genius. With so we said spoilers for Endgame.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Iron Spider suit and like the tech suit and everything from all those other movies that he's been in. It doesn't show him being inventive. It's just him sort of like piggybacking off of Tony Stark, and takes away from the genius of the character.
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about earlier, is that it's an unfortunate situation where this is indeed the third attempt at bringing Spider-Man to the movies.
Correct.
So they have to do something that's different, because one of the things people complained about with Amazing Spider-Man is that it was too much like the first one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it totally was.
So it's like it's kind of one of those like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
The problem with that was they told the same story, but if you keep the character the same, but tell a different story, that would be fun.
Anyway, we don't have to talk about the past. We can talk about the present.
Yeah, no doubt.
But again, like as we're talking about Spider-Man Far From Home, it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that this is again the third Spider-Man sequel. It's the 8th Spider-Man movie we've gotten in the past 17 years.
Wow.
If you include Venom, 9th movie. But
Okay, yeah, I hear you.
So some of the commentary we're probably going to end up having about the film is related to the fact there's aspects of Spider-Man's story that have been told before, and therefore they can't tell it the same way. They have to try and find a way to be.
Yes.
And I think that presents part of the creative conflict that the story has, the movie has, is that it has to, again, has to be different. It can't be more of the same. So you kind of have to love it where it's at, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this could be the last time we see the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies as part of the MCU. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm saying it could go the route of the Marvel MCU Netflix show. So if you've watched Daredevil or Jessica Jones, those movies are, air quotes, set in the MCU.
But there's no character crossovers whatsoever.
There's no character crossovers. The plots of the shows are rarely impacted by the events of the films, and the events of the TV shows have zero impact on the movie.
And which is unfortunate, because I think you'd want to have someone like Jessica Jones or Power Man to be part of the Avengers. Those guys are pretty impressive individuals.
And I'm saying, hold on to your butts, everyone. This could happen with Spider-Man. It could, if Sony and Marvel don't agree to like continue their arrangement, then it could go the route of that, where we still see Tom Holland, we still see Zendaya, we still see Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, and then it just sort of becomes its own little movie where it's not connected to the rest of the
Right. It should be a little bit weird. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Or they could also just reboot again.
No! No, please spare us that.
It could.
Not another reboot. That'd be awful.
I'm just
They
saying.
have a good character in Tom Holland.
I know, but I'm saying, Doctor What? It might happen.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Heavens no. Heavens no, I say.
So when they announced the title for this movie,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, really? Like, you're going to continue the gimmick of like having the word home in the title?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't bother me.
It didn't bother you?
No, not in the least.
Okay, so then I was just being a whiner about it.
A little bit.
Because like, what are they going to do with the next one?
Being a whiner. No, I'm kidding. I love
Spider-Man,
you. I love you.
Home for the holidays?
Oh yeah.
Having a Christmas movie.
What would be another good home?
Spider-Man, Home Arrest.
Yeah. Spider-Man Home Alone.
Spider-Man.
He fights off against Danny DeVito, and who's the other guy?
You're thinking not of Danny DeVito.
Not Danny DeVito. Joe Pesci.
Daniel
Pesci.
Stern and Joe Pesci.
That's right, yeah.
He would destroy those guys.
He would destroy those guys. Those guys didn't stand up against Macaulay Culkin, who had no superpowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see that now. Just a movie where Spider-Man beats up the crooks from Home Alone. But
that's another great crossover. That would be an interesting.
You know what? And those movies were produced by Fox, which is now owned by Disney. So if the relationship continues, it's a thing that could potentially happen. Just saying, guys. So I thought the title was lame, but then when I heard it was, Spider-Man's going on vacation to Europe.
Yeah.
I was like...
It made sense.
I was like...
But also didn't make sense because he had been to space. Which, far from home, Europe is not far from home when you've been to space.
Very true. Yeah, and there was some ambiguity even when the first trailer came out from Far From Home, if the movie was going to be set after Avengers Endgame or before Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
Because, of course, by the time we saw that first trailer, I think it was like in January, we'd all seen Infinity War and knew that Spider-Man had died in Infinity War. So we're like, okay, either this movie is set before Infinity War begins, and it's a kind of like an Ant-Man and the Wasp situation where the film
precedes the events of Infinity War. Yeah.
Or it's set after the Avengers Endgame, and we know that Spider-Man's...
You know what, though? I always thought that Spider-Man would be coming back because he was too big of a character to kill off in the snap. So I figured that they're going to have to find some way of bringing him back. I didn't know if they could completely reverse the snap, but I thought that they were going to be bringing him back.
Yeah, and even when I saw it happen, watching Infinity War for the first time, I was invested in it emotionally and thinking, oh no. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the other Spider-Man movie had its release date confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to a point that I want to say about Far From Home that I thought was very interesting. This was the first time that I went to see an MCU movie without knowing their release schedule.
Oh.
Because basically since the time of, I would say even Iron Man 2, by the time Iron Man 2 had come out, they'd announced when Thor and Captain America and Avengers. So even going back to 2010, fans like myself who were kind of in the know knew what was coming next. So there was, I guess, only a certain amount of surprise and mystery that we had walking into the movies, because we knew it was coming next. And Marvel's done such a good job of kind of plotting everything out and announcing the release dates for the movies that, again, it's like when the beeper for Captain Marvel shows up in the Infinity War.
You knew exactly what that was for.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh yeah, that movie release date's been set for some.
Right, okay.
But with Spider-Man Far From Home, they have not announced any of the actual. They've announced the release dates, but not the actual titles of the movies.
Or even what movies they're for?
Yes.
So we know that there's going to be like an MCU movie in 2020.
Yes.
And we don't know if that is going to be Captain America starring Falcon, or if it's going to be like Thor movie or Guardians
Correct.
of the Galaxy. We don't
So
know.
there's MCU release dates up until 2023.
Really? But they're just stated as movies.
Yeah, like
Oh,
untitled.
man.
And at Comic-Con this year, they're going to announce their slate for Phase 4.
Okay, when's Comic-Con? Is this the San Diego one?
Yeah.
The big one?
Yeah, the big one.
The
So
big-
that's like 3 weeks from now.
The big kahooey?
But what I mean to say is that, like, for me going into Far From Home, I had I had no idea what was coming next.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, wow, it's been a good 9 years since I went to a Marvel movie without knowing what was coming next.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's almost good because you can kind of predict story based on what movies are going to be coming out. So if you know that, oh, okay, well, like, yeah, you can kind of like know that you said you saw Iron Man and you knew that there was going to be a Captain, and you knew there was going to be an Avengers film. Well, you knew that the Avengers film that they're going to come out with was going to have Captain America and Thor in it, guaranteed. I mean, not all iterations of the Avengers have had those guys in it, but you knew that it would have those two guys because those coming out.
And so I feel like I almost had like the casual fan experience of being like not ignorant, but just unaware of what was coming next, and it actually like made me feel a little more excited about the movie.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe I should just stop paying attention to things, live in ignorant bliss about what was coming next.
Sometimes that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. Well, no, we'd have to grab a glass. Sure, here.
Oh, tarps for all for Flow
You could probably stand
Okay, I will.
either closer to the mic or talk louder.
I'll just be right here.
Even
All right.
then, I would say like just raise the pitch of your voice.
Raise the pitch.
Well, not that high. But
All right, raise the pitch. Bring it in. Okay.
I thought I had. So we're gonna start talking about Far From Home now. We've been spending all this time kind of talking about like the circumstances by which this movie came into existence.
The environment. You need to know where this movie lives relative to everything else.
Yeah. So a thought I had after watching the movie is that I realized it felt like a tie-in issue to an event comic.
Hey, what now? I don't know what that means.
I figured so. So comic books. You know what a comic book is?
I do.
Okay. So comic books. There's a series published about particular characters.
Okay.
Imagine each comic book series is like a different movie series.
Yes, I was thinking about this. But yes, okay, I know where you're going with this. But
Okay.
yeah, go for it.
So what happens in comic books, usually once a year at least, there are crossover events that happen between different comic book series.
Yes, the MCU is doing this. This is exactly what I was feeling. But yes.
So obviously characters from the Black Panther franchise, the Doctor Strange franchise, the Spider-Man franchise are in Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
And what happens in comic books, whenever there's a big event like this, they obviously have like the issues, the mini-series, if you will, for like the actual event. But then in each individual character's solo series, there's usually what's called a tie-in. And a tie-in comic means that it's a story that is tied into the big crossover event.
Okay.
But it focuses on the characters that normally live in the solo character series.
Okay, so now I feel like you're going to bring this back to Far From Home?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm saying that Far From Home for me felt like the movie version of a tie-in comic. So what a tie-in comic does for the reader is it allows you to basically see the consequences and the scope and the impact of the larger event on the characters that are part of the individual series.
Okay.
For example, in the Civil War comic book series, Spider-Man reveals his identity to the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Oh, cool.
that happens in the actual Civil War comic. But
Okay.
then in the Spider-Man issue that comes out that month, it's showing how the characters in Spider-Man's book, including Spider-Man himself, are dealing with the fallout from that decision. Because,
Gotcha.
as you can imagine, something significant that happens to Spider-Man in this event series should impact what happens in his own little comic books.
Yes, and so the events of like Infinity War and Endgame have effects on this Spider-Man Far From Home.
Exactly. So
Okay, and in a similar way, Homecoming, the entire plot of Homecoming was related to the events of Avengers, the first of the Avengers.
exactly.
Yeah.
But more so than any other MC movie to date, Far From Home felt like a tie-in comic to Avengers Endgame
Okay.
because you really saw how the events of that film were impacting the characters of the Spider-Mans. And you can always tell, like, if you're reading it, the kind of like the monthly. If you imagine if you're like reading this monthly issues of Spider-Man, you know, and all of a sudden you pick up the issue that's like a tie-in. All of a sudden, the whole chunk of the story is dedicated to this event that's happening in this other series.
So you feel like, man, I got to go get that other series to understand this particular comic that I'm watching. Yeah, reading.
And if you're the type of person that only reads the Spider-Man comics, you might be a little off-put by this particular issue because it's so related to this other thing that's happening. You're like, I don't know how this relates. I feel like I'm missing information.
From a business standpoint, it's a really clever decision because you're like, oh, really annoyed and what the heck is going on with this other thing? And so there's going to be a certain proportion that will go out and start getting in Civil War just because they're in Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, Far From Home felt like a tie-in comic because the plot and the setting and the environment of Avengers Endgame really has an impact on Far From Home.
Yes.
And I would say a lot of the atmosphere of the movie and even some of the story elements are a direct result of the actions of Avengers Endgame. To the point where, if you have not seen Avengers Endgame, you would, I would say, really be kind of lost. Like, I can't imagine at this point there's really anybody who only watches the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, just imagine, there could be a person who only follows Spider-Man movies. So they saw Homecoming, they went and saw Venom, they saw Spider-Verse, and now they're coming up to Far From Home.
You'd be completely lost. Like,
you really would.
Yeah, you really would.
Because again, the whole setting is in a world that has experienced the events of the two Avengers movies. So this is sort of the feeling I had watching, which I thought was cool because it's always neat to me like to see when these movies can evoke the experience of a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally had that feeling the other day where I realized, man, basically like the Iron Man, Thor series, they're basically kind of like a comic book series, and every now and then they have crossovers, and those are your big team-up movies: Civil War, Avengers, and Infinity War and Endgame. Like it's so much so like the comic book model. When I thought of it, I'm like, man, this is kind of freaky, like how similar it is.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, okay.
I've been thinking that way for years, but I'm glad to see you're finally here with me.
I'm a little bit slower at thinking than you are there, Average Joe. It took me a few years to catch up.
No worries. You're here now. That's what's important.
I'll bask in the glow of your genius.
Oh. So, I don't know. For me, I actually, like, coming into Far From Home, I had, like, a checklist. It's like, these are things I want this movie to accomplish.
Okay.
Because one of the things I complained about with Spider-Man Homecoming is that I felt like he was too attached to Tony Stark. I felt like he was relying too much on Tony Stark's gadgets. And I felt like there weren't really any consequences for his character. He kind of goes through the whole movie with people handing stuff to him, and he's not, like, there's a couple of times where he has to, like, oh, I can't go swimming in the pool with my classmates because I gotta go do this Spider-Man thing.
Yeah, okay.
But you never really felt the same kind of angst that, like, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
I agree. I really liked Tobey Maguire's angst in the first and the second. I would say there was angst when he had to ditch the girl that he was really interested in to go stop Vulture.
Yeah, but then she just moves away. Like, there's no...
She moved away because what he did, though.
I know, but there's no long-term consequences for him because, like, oh, whatever, this girl just, it's like he doesn't have to live with those consequences because she just moves away.
Yeah, I think if it was a situation where we were a little bit more connected to, like, more involved in the relationship. What was the girl's name? Liz. If we were more involved in Peter and Liz's relationship, like, say if that had been like a, I don't know, like if it was a sitcom and we'd been watching the show for like 3 years, and yeah, we'd be a little bit more concerned that he was throwing away that relationship. But I think because it was such a short, like, it was just a one movie. Anyways.
Like, his whole motivation for being Spider-Man seems as though he just wants to impress Tony Stark. It's like he doesn't actually have the mantra anymore. With great power comes great responsibility. It's like,
yeah,
well, I gotta impress Mr. Stark so that he'll make me an Avenger.
Yeah. Yep, that is a less impressive of a
So
motivation.
My first goal for the movie was like, can it improve on that? Can it actually present a Peter Parker who has to deal with consequences and has to, like, deal with responsibility?
Okay.
And then the second thing I was on my checklist, which was worrying me with the trailers, it said this whole idea of, like, who's going to be the next Iron Man? And I was like, please do not, for the love of all that is good, do not just turn Spider-Man into Iron Man. Like, there's a reason they're two different characters. Spider-Man has an entire history devoid of any real connection to Tony Stark. Like, you don't need to make him the next Iron Man. And that was something I was really worried about because the trailer certainly hinted at that. It was like, all right, you're out. I'm watching you, movie. That's right. And then my third kind of checklist hope goal for the movie I said this better actually, if this is going to be taking place after Endgame, this better actually like address the fallout of that movie.
Yeah, and I don't think they did that well enough.
And we'll get into that later, but that was my goal. Is like, okay, because these Spider-Man films are a little funnier than some of the other ones. So I'm like, if they just write it off as a joke in the beginning and that's it, then I will be disappointed. Because again, a criticism of the MCU as a whole is that there aren't any consequences, and so certainly Avengers Endgame presents consequences, and so it's like, okay, if these consequences exist, then you have to follow up on them in the other movies.
Mm-hmm.
They have a bad habit of like introducing kind of major plot elements and then abandoning.
Yeah.
So those were like my 3 things I was really looking for with Far From Home. Did you kind of have any kind of checklist or things you were hoping to see?
Okay, well, I was hoping that they would address the post-snap fallout and the undoing of the snap. So I'd hope they'd address that. I'd hope that they would, honestly, just develop Peter Parker as a character and make him more sort of independent of MCU. Because he has a wonderful backstory. He can make standalone movies. I think those are really my 2 biggest things I was kind of looking forward to.
Okay, so as we talk about the film, we'll see how the movie stacks up against our checklists.
Okay.
Getting into what the critics are saying about this film, are you familiar at all with how it's doing on Rotten Tomatoes?
No.
All right, well, you want to take a guess? So Spider-Man Homecoming, when it came out years ago, scored like 92% from critics.
Okay.
So it did fairly well. With that in mind, where do you think Far From Home stacks up?
I'm going to throw out 89%.
89%. Okay,
Yeah.
so the film, as of right now, has a 92% on Rotten
92.
Tomatoes.
Okay, so almost identical.
Almost identical.
Okay. Audience scores.
Audience score. Okay, so what do you think the audiences are saying?
I'm going to say typically audiences like this type of thing better than the critics, so I'm going to go with like 96.
96, very close, 97%.
97, okay, all right.
And this is interesting because in the past couple months, Rotten Tomatoes has revised the way that audiences are allowed to evaluate the movies. You basically, I don't know how they do it because I haven't tried it yet, but you have to prove that you saw the film before you give it an audience rating.
Do you have to like answer questions about the movie, and if you get them wrong, you're not
I think you have to somehow like prove, show proof of payment for your ticket.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's a pretty big undertaking, but I understand why they did that, because after the whole Captain Marvel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So the fact that it has a 97% from audiences is saying a lot.
Okay, yeah.
Especially, there's been a kind of a narrative this summer where there's been movies where the critics hated it and audiences loved it. But along with Toy Story 4, this is kind of one of the few examples of a movie that both critics and audiences...
Good. I'm glad we can get along.
This movie opens up on a Tuesday, and I don't know if you're really familiar with like reasons why it opened on a Tuesday.
Well, okay, so it's 4th of July when we're recording date.
Yes.
So I imagine usually these types of things open on a Thursday, and I think that would really mess up a lot of things. So I think that maybe putting in a little bit of space away from the 4th of July.
You're correct. So it is indeed Independence Day to our American friends as we're recording. So hope you're enjoying your fireworks and hot dog and whatever you guys do down there.
Bald Eagles.
I'm wearing my Toronto Raptors championship hat right now so take that, America. But we love you. Nonetheless, the Bachelor podcast loves Americans.
We do.
So you're correct. So it's kind of I don't know why, but it's kind of a thing in the States that basically they never want a movie opening right around Independence Day. And I think it actually has something to do with the fact that they actually like shut down everything.
Oh, okay.
For Independence Day, like all businesses are closed kind of thing.
Okay.
So it happens pretty much every year. There's basically whatever movies are coming out that week are opening up on the Tuesday.
So we got the cheap Tuesday prices for this.
Yes.
Because of that.
Yes.
That was pretty good for us.
So like Amazing Spider-Man in 2012 had a Tuesday release date. Spider-Man 2 in 2004 had a June 30th release date.
Okay.
I remember because I waited in line for like an hour outside back before you could book and reserve your seats.
Yeah.
I wanted to be first in line for Spider-Man 2, so I got to the theater, and at that point they didn't even open the door. Like I waited outside the building.
Wow.
Anyway, that's just to show how much I love Spider-Man.
You're a big fan, man.
So
okay, in terms of it's kind of like choosing your children.
yeah, let's not go there right now.
Yeah, we can't rank our favorites.
Also, I should point out I'm drinking from a mug for a movie I'm not sure if I've seen or not, because when I saw Spider-Man Far From Home, the drink cup they gave me, it looks like it's from an X-Men movie.
Isn't it Dark Phoenix? It looks like Dark Phoenix.
It says Dark Phoenix, but I don't know what that is.
Well, no, that's Dark Phoenix. It's Professor X. It's Magneto, and
I understand the words, but I'm just saying for some reason whenever I hear the words Dark Phoenix, like my brain, it's hard. It's like goes. It's weird.
You blocked it out.
It's so strange. Anyway, so because Far From Home opened on a Tuesday, and because today is Independence Day, the box office reporting is kind of off kilter. The only numbers we have right now are its opening day numbers.
Okay.
So on its opening day, it garnered the largest opening for a Tuesday movie ever,
that's pretty darn good.
making just under $40 million.
Okay, but and this is going to be very hard to compare to other movies.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the comparison Box Office Mojo makes is to The Amazing Spider-Man, which had the previous record for the highest opening for a Tuesday movie.
Okay.
So the fact that it has the highest opening for a Tuesday release suggests that it's going to do well.
Okay, good.
And that success will just kind of carry throughout the week and over into the...
Okay, can we go through, so $40 million. Let's go through the openings for the other Spider-Man movies, like standalone Spider-Man movies. So, like, what about Homecoming? How good was Homecoming? Listeners, stay along and Average Joe.
All right, so the highest opening weekend for a Spider-Man film is actually 2002 Spider-Man.
Oh, really?
And its opening weekend... Oh, I see, it's adjusted for inflation, because
Okay.
the opening... Okay, so let me... No, you're right. Okay, sorry. So they have them ranked by their total gross.
Okay.
And then there's a separate column for opening.
Okay.
But they're ranked from highest grossing overall to lowest grossing. So that's why...
That's why it's a little
I'm
bit out
mistook.
of there. Okay,
so the largest opening weekend, I should say, for a Spider-Man film is indeed Spider-Man 3.
Okay.
Made $150 million
Dang.
12 years ago.
Thanks, Sam. That's pretty good.
And then the next highest grossing opening is Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay.
Made $117 million years ago. And then Spider-Man from 2002 is in third.
Okay.
So this movie will most likely do pretty well, and if it gets good word of mouth, and it really has 2 weeks until Lion King comes out in strongest competition.
Okay. That was smart of them.
As if they were like working with Disney or something.
I know, right?
So as of this moment, yes, technically Far From Home is the lowest grossing Spider-Man movie because it's only been out it only has numbers recorded for 1 day.
Yeah, but you're comparing apples and oranges. We can't compare. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the movie itself, which we've already done, but we're going to do it anyway again. So
3, 2, 1 spoilerverse or no?
no, we gotta listen to your attempt at like providing the DVD box cover summary.
Okay, all right.
So we've already established you can give full spoilers for Endgame.
So the events of this movie occur
Okay,
after.
but don't give spoilers
Endgame.
for
Yes. I will.
this actual movie itself.
I will, but I'll give the DVD box cover.
The whole world is looking for the next Iron Man. I don't know if I can live up to that.
I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone. We have a job to do. You're coming with us?
Can you give that to MJ in case something happens to me?
Nothing's going to happen to you. You got this. Stark made you an Avenger. The world needs that.
So Spider-Man is reeling from the death of Tony Stark after he died to save the world and to renew or to save 50% of the universe. He is trying to figure out who he is as a kid, and he is sent on a trip over to. He goes on a school trip over to Europe, and if the film examines his interaction with S.H.I.E.L.D., with a new character who is Mysterio, and the interplay between being Spider-Man and being on an awkward school trip with your friends and classmates. And it's relatable in that I think a lot of us have been on awkward school trips, but then also conflicting responsibilities to your friends, your crush, classmates, and to saving everyone.
All right, there you go.
Good summary?
Yeah, good enough.
Okay.
So in the same sense that Homecoming kind of it almost felt like two different movies at times. It's like you have this high school comedy basically, and then you have this superhero action.
Yeah.
And this kind of continues that trend. You've got like that high school teen comedy romance school trip movie,
Yeah.
and then you have an MCU movie.
Yeah.
Did it feel for you as if it was too jarring, or did it feel connected enough?
No, I actually felt pretty seamless. Like the events of one would tie in pretty well to the events, and I thought they did an excellent job with the high school.
Yeah, because really, like the high school stuff is where the Spider-Man films stand out in the MCU, because all of the other characters in these Marvel movies are adults, and there might be teenage characters or younger characters, but it's really like this is kind of like the Spider-Man niche of the MCU is focusing on kids in high school.
Yeah.
I was kind of confused as to how a science like debate team or whatever they are, a decathlon team, was able to afford a trip to Europe.
Right. Well, no, like for these types of things, did you ever like I did a trip to Europe back, and did you do anything?
No,
like that?
I did not.
Okay, so like, I mean, I was able to have. Anyways, we swung it, and I went on a trip with to Europe with like we had a teacher and a few other like adults, and then a whole bunch of like kids.
Did this movie remind you of that experience?
Absolutely, yeah. Like, you know what though? Although the chaperone was more awkward than my high school teacher was awkward. My high school teacher probably drank a little bit too much on the trip, which is probably not good for a chaperone. But anyways, yeah, I don't know if that's bad.
Whatever.
This was many years ago.
Because like it is jarring in a sense that it's a high school kid and he's got a girl he's got a crush on, he wants to hang out with her.
Mm.
So were you able to kind of enter into that, or did it feel like it was a movie that was not meant for you?
No, 100%. I would say though, I don't like it when people start exploring the romantic angle, these types of. I know that Spider-Man's with Mary Jane, supposed to be interested in Mary Jane.
She's not Mary Jane, she's Michelle Jones.
Oh yeah, she's Michelle Jones, not Mary Jane. Sorry.
She's MJ.
She's MJ. Yeah, I know he's supposed to be together with MJ. But I don't like that. I liked her in Homecoming with sort of the sarcastic and making him feel a little bit insecure. I don't like them developing a romantic relationship.
Oh, you're not shipping them.
No, I'm not shipping it. I feel it takes away from the more interesting story of the other stuff that he.
Interesting.
I wasn't invested enough.
So did it make watching those scenes hard for you then?
Yeah. And not in a good way. Not in like, oh, I want this to be resolved. It's more of a, oh, I wish they wouldn't spend screen time on this.
Yeah, I didn't mind it as much. I was able to enter into the experience, and I watched enough anime and whatnot that's like about teenagers trying to fall in love with each other. And like I remember being a teenager. It's very you're so awkward. You don't know what to say. And
it's the worst. It's the absolute worst.
And so I don't know. There's some kind of like sadistic part of me that enjoys seeing other people.
Okay, fair enough.
Even if they're fictional characters, kind of go through the same motions. And it also really humanizes Spider-Man. It's like here's a superhero who can jump off of buildings and lift heavy things. But you know what? He has a hard time talking to girls as well.
Yeah, the guy has fought the most fearsome villain in the universe, like Thanos.
Yeah.
And yet he's afraid to talk to a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes him a little more relatable.
You know what? That is relatable. That is, because there's a lot of us that will do you're selling me on this. A lot of us will do very impressive things, like we'll get up and give talks, impressive things at work. We will have all these other areas of our lives that we might be excellent. When it comes to talking to a girl and sweating, like, man, what do I do with my hands? Do I hold a mug? Do I put them on my hands? Do I put them on the table? That's kind of weird, and you start overthinking what talking to a girl, but you've done all these other impressive things that you're really proud of.
The action scenes in this movie, because of certain plot elements we'll have to talk about in spoilers, they are very heavy on the visual effects.
Yes.
Like I was kind of rewatching parts of Spider-Man 2 and even Spider-Man 3 this past week, and I was like, there are visual effects here, but there's also a lot of just people in suits on a set actually like fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas because he's fighting these like elemental creatures, it's a CGI monster, and then it's like a CGI Spider-Man kind of flying through the air, shooting webs and whatnot. So there were, I have to admit, there were a couple moments where like I was never like thinking, oh, this looks fake, but because I could almost say it's like this is like a cutscene from a video game or like something from an animated movie, wherein like it's cool to see it on screen, but I don't feel like there's anything actually real here.
I'd agree. I actually, as good as CG is, or say CGI, it doesn't age well. Even like the stuff that I thought was absolutely like when I went back and watched, I thought that was like the best CGI in the world. Looking back at it now, that movie has aged incredibly well, but you can tell that the CGI is. So I'm wondering how this.
Well,
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
Yeah.
I was really excited to see that they were bringing in some different actors from other MCU movies to be a part of this one.
Okay.
I thought it was really neat to have like Nick Fury and Maria Hill,
yeah.
and then bringing back Happy Hogan.
Yeah.
Played by Jon Favreau, who of course is not only the director of the first two Iron Mans, but he's also the director of the upcoming Lion King.
Oh yeah,
He's a very talented man.
Yeah, he's kind of a little bit up there, the MCU, isn't he?
Yeah, he kind of disappeared for a number of years because he was in Iron Man 3 and then he didn't show up again until Spider-Man Homecoming.
True.
So I'm happy to see he's like making lots of appearances in the movies. In terms of my checklist of things I wanted the movie to accomplish, I feel like the way they told the story did a serviceable job of reminding us why he's Spider-Man.
Okay.
And in a way, Tony Stark dying is a good thing because it basically forces him to like ask himself like, why is he doing this without Mr. Stark
Yeah.
there to be his source of like motivation and inspiration. It's like, what has he got on his own?
Yeah, well, you don't want this obsequious little kid always going to Mr. Stark to try to solve all your problems. You need to solve your problems on your own. Yeah?
And this is kind of a spoiler, but they do address the events of Avengers Endgame. They mostly address the kind of like the fallout in the first like 5 minutes. And there are kind of like sprinklings throughout the movie to like suggest that this is a world that has experienced, as they call it, the blip.
Yeah, okay. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because this is something you don't really need. It's not a huge spoiler for the movie, but is the like how would the world went from having 6 billion people in it down to 3 billion. Okay. If you brought back 3 billion people into our world after 5 years, yeah, if it was for 30, if you had 3 billion people go away for 30 minutes, that wouldn't be an issue. For 5 years, that's an issue. Food stores would be down, your economy would have ground to a halt. There would be mass starvation, there would be riots, there would be, like, they addressed the homelessness issue, which I thought was good. But there's so much more
which is why
issues that could have existed.
I think that they're not, I hope anyway, that the MCU is not done addressing Endgame fallout.
Yeah.
Because they do say that this is set 8 months after the second snap. So it's suggesting that enough time has passed that like the world's kind of been able to like get things moving again.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's still, like most of the fallout is addressed in the first couple minutes. And like I said, they're sprinkling throughout it.
Yeah.
My fear is that that's all they'll do in the MCU to kind of address the fallout. And then the next movie that comes out, it's as if moving on, like business as usual.
Yeah.
So I hope that this isn't the end, because if this is all we get in the MCU for addressing the fallout, it's not enough, and it'll just continue the kind of criticism the MCU's gotten about not having lasting consequences.
Exactly. Hey, what's the name of the chaperone for the trip?
The teacher?
Yeah, the teacher.
Well, there's the two teachers.
The white guy.
I only know the actor's name.
Yeah, the actor's name.
Martin Starr.
Martin Starr. He's been in a lot of stuff. There's that one scene that he's in where he talks about his... he's a good comedian too, a lot of other stuff. There's one scene that he's like, yeah, my ex-wife, she pretended that she blipped out and actually ran off with another guy. It's so terrible. But for his character, it's rather funny.
Yeah, so this movie continues the trend of Infinity War and Endgame in the sense that the trailer only gives you part of the story. Mm-hmm. There's basically like a point almost halfway through the movie where like a switch flips and the whole narrative kind of turns on its head. And this is kind of a spoiler, but if you know the comic books and you know that Mysterio is involved, you can kind of see where they're going with it.
I suspended my belief about that point for a long time. I'm like, is Mysterio?
And you know what? We'll talk about that more in spoilers, but just to say here, the movie kind of goes through a transition about halfway through the film that really changes the tone of the movie, the tone of the story. And I think it's a smart move because, again, Infinity War and Endgame kind of benefited from this. You got to see the movie in theaters because you don't want to be spoiled, because you want to enjoy the surprises that the movie has to present for itself. And I would say this film continues that, because the reveals that do pop up, not just with like the switch flip halfway through, but also the post-credit scenes in this movie are by some of the most shocking and confusing, frankly, that the MCU has produced to date.
They messed with my head a lot. I have questions for you, Average Joe, that I need answered.
Yes.
But those are spoiler questions.
So because this film has a turning point wherein it becomes so spoilery, we really can't say anything more about this film without talking about spoilers.
Agreed.
So with that being said, I actually really like this movie. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man movies that's been... So if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is where you stop listening, go watch the movie, and come back. There's going to be a time code in the description of the episode that'll tell you where to skip around for spoilers. If you just don't have the time to watch the movie right now and you want to just hear our final thoughts, you can skip ahead. Otherwise, we're going to go into the spoiler-verse now. Are you ready, Dr. What?
I am so ready.
All right. So we're in the spoiler-verse now, talking about this movie. Obviously, the biggest spoiler for the film.
So we're in the spoiler-verse.
We're in the spoiler-verse.
But there is no multiverse.
Yes.
Yes! Big spoiler right there. Okay.
So it was a huge thing when the second trailer came out from Far From Home, where they introduced Mr. Beck as Mysterio, and the whole time it's presenting Mysterio as if he's a good guy, and all the promotional stuff is like saying, oh, like they're gonna team up, and then like, he drops the line about being from another Earth.
Yeah.
And all of us who know the comic books know that Mysterio, in every incarnation, always presents himself as a hero, and then using his illusions and his trickery, turns out to be a villain.
So when I was watching this movie, I knew Mysterio was a trickster. I knew that he used his hologram technology to kind of mess with things. But I'm like, but he's from an alternate. If he actually is from an alternate universe, then he might actually be a good guy. And I was just holding out hope. I was still tricked. I was still like, when is the hammer I was thinking, when's the hammer gonna drop? Is this guy actually a bad guy, or is he actually a good guy? That was actually my thought process for most of
there
it.
was maybe 5% of me that said, you know what? They might go all Mandarin on us. They might go the route of the Skrulls, wherein they kind of bait you, be like, oh, like you think we're gonna do the thing from the comics? You think we're gonna do the thing?
Yeah.
But then, haha, we're not.
No, but this followed the comic.
And so, the multiverse thing, we can just get that out of the way first. So that at least as of right now, there is no multiverse in the MCU. And the way that they kind of set up in the trailer, they say, oh, like the snap tore a hole in our dimension. So there was enough there to suggest that, oh, like this makes sense. And, it was like, oh, maybe this is how they'll bring the X-Men in. And maybe this is how they're going to incorporate the Spider-Verse into future movies. Like, I was genuinely... When I heard that the post-credit scene was shocking, what I thought it was going to be was like Tom Holland was going to meet Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
And I thought they were going to set up a Spider-Man movie. I genuinely... I was like, if this thing about the multiverse holds true and there is a shocking post-credit scene, it has to be that.
You thought that was going to be the post-credit scene?
Yeah, that's what I was... I'm like, that would make me fanboy hard.
Wow, that would be pretty epic.
It's possible. It could happen.
Yeah.
But anyway... So multiverse as of right now, it could come out later and through another movie to show that the multiverse does exist in the MCU. Mm-hmm. But Mysterio, we can just talk about him right now.
Okay.
I thought Jake Gyllenhaal, up until the point when he does the twist, was very charming, very charismatic, and he presented himself so well as like a foil for Nick Fury, because Nick Fury's like, "What the heck are you doing, Parker? Like you need to step up, you need to do your thing." And he kind of comes in as like a much compassionate figure and affirming Peter. It's like, "Oh, we could have used you on my Earth."
And he fills that void because you can tell that Peter is longing for someone to kind of show him the ropes, and he's feeling inadequate, and he steps in to be that person in Peter's life. That's actually very key to Peter's motivation, or very key. That's a very key element to the story, is that Peter feels unworthy. So as you guys know in the movie, Peter inherits the Edith, which is, even in death, I'm the hero. So it's Tony Stark's computer system and security system for the entire globe, which has drones deployed anywhere in the universe.
I don't want to know why Tony has so many drones that have all the weapons. It seems kind of excessive, but...
Yeah, you would have thought he would have learned his lesson from Ultron, but hey, the guy didn't.
Nope.
But so he has that, and he feels inadequate to have it. And if you're listening to spoilers right now, he passes that computer system on to
Quentin Beck.
My apology.
Yeah, so there was like a glimmer of me that was like, maybe they won't go the route of but when it did happen, I was like, yes, because it's very rare, frankly, that the MCU actually portrays the villains faithfully to the way they're done in the comics.
Yeah.
And there is an alteration, like it's not an exact page to screen, but they capture the spirit of Mysterio, this whole idea that he's kind of like this guy who thinks very highly of himself. And
arrogant. Yeah. Very arrogant.
And he gets kind of full of himself, and he has all the illusion.
He's supposed to be blonde, folks, right?
Yeah, but the hair color at this point
doesn't matter.
Yeah. What I thought was really cool is the way that they tied Mysterio's origin into the MCU history. So the fact that they referred to that opening scene of Civil War with the hologram technology, I was like, that is such an ingenious way to fit this character's origin into the history of the MCU. And then to have the other guy, who's Peter Billingsley, he was one of the producers on Iron Man. He was actually the little kid from A Christmas.
Oh, really?
As a child actor.
Oh, wow.
And so he had that scene with Jeff Bridges in Iron Man just as a kind of a cameo appearance.
Okay.
They bring him back for this movie. Like, they had a callback to the first MCU movie in this film with that scientist guy.
Wow.
And what I especially love about this I'm perfectly okay with this kind of retcon to Mysterio's story to include the whole Tony Stark thing.
Yeah.
Because it provides us another example of how Tony Stark is not the best guy. Like, as much as people are happy or proud or, feel like he did them a service by dying for them, there's a lot of villains in the MCU that exist because of mistakes he made.
Yeah.
And this whole Mysterio operations is another example of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me wonder, like, how many more... And the Vulture was like that,
The
too.
Vulture was because of partly Tony Stark.
Yeah. So it's like, how
Yeah.
many... I'm curious to see what the overall legacy of Tony Stark will be.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly there is more negative than positive.
And in this movie, as we know, Peter's feeling terrible about giving Edith over to Mysterio. He's feeling, man, I made a mistake. I'm not worthy to be a superhero. And it comes to that scene later on where he realizes Tony Stark made a ton of mistakes too. Tony Stark made the mistake of Ultron.
Happy told him that.
Yeah, well, like Ultron and what are all the other ones?
Like pretty much every Iron Man villain.
Yeah, pretty much.
And now every Spider-Man villain.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, so Tony Stark has created a lot of villains.
So Mysterio, the way they do him, excellent. And then when they get to the scenes where it's the illusions, I'm like, this is straight out of comics, straight out of animated series. I'm like, this is perfect Mysterio.
So I was confused, like that scene with him in Venice, and when he gets like splashed with water. I'm like, up until that point, I'm like, okay, are these actually illusions? Because like he's having physical interactions with them. So I just didn't even know how it could even be possible.
Yeah, so I think they used the cloaked drones to like push up the water. They had some practical effects going on.
Absolutely, which I thought, okay, this is a really like I wasn't expecting drones because like from the comic books he just has these little hollow cubes and stuff, right? And so like it's not actual physical interaction, but because he was having physical interaction with the characters, I had to be like, maybe the elementals are real. That's what kind of threw me.
But those hallucination scenes are amazing, are they not?
Oh yeah, I actually think that Mysterio as a villain is one of the more frightening of villains. A person who is strong and fast and smart. Those are dangerous villains. But you always kind of imagine a way that the superhero can get out of it. I struggle to know how the superhero can get out of it when there is illusions or like dreams. What's that one Batman?
Scarecrow?
Scarecrow. No. Yeah, Scarecrow's great. Don't get me wrong. But it was in the animated series. Was that Scarecrow as well when he's like in a dream sequence?
Oh, you're thinking of the Justice League episode with Doctor.
Is that the one?
Yeah, where he's drinking the coffee to not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Justice.
Okay. So yeah, like Batman has to stay awake. When you have to, like when you don't know what's real and what's not, it's disconcerting to me, and it actually gives me anxiety. Whereas like the big strong guy, that doesn't give me anxiety anymore.
Fair enough. The Mysterio, well done in this film.
Very much so. I even like how they came up with it.
Yeah, that was cute.
That was actually really well done, and it wasn't cheeky. It wasn't like a Han Solo. It was like
why'd you have to remind me of that?
I'm just comparing. Comparing a crappy name origin to a good name origin. Yes.
There was a lot of trailer footage that didn't end up being in the movie, which I was thankful for because I fall in the habit of watching every trailer many times, so I just ended up kind of like waiting for those scenes to show up in the movie.
Yeah.
And so like there's a whole scene in the trailers where he's in the Iron Spider suit fighting off some crooks.
Yeah.
Never in the film.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask the question, like, why is he even like you see the Iron Spider suit in this movie for one scene when he's at this like fundraiser.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this seems really excessive. Why are you wearing this high-tech space equipped Spider-Man suit for this public appearance?
I guess it was his one suit that he had, or there's the suit that he was well known for, maybe? I don't know. No, but he never really appeared on Earth except for the battle with Thanos.
Yeah.
In that suit.
Maybe because it was the fanciest and made him look more impressive.
Yeah.
I genuinely, like, the only narrative purpose it serves to show up in the film is to remind you of that he was in Avengers.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, if you take that fight scene out of the movie where he uses the Iron Spider suit, it just seemed kind of excessive for it to even be.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of hoping that the Iron Spider suit would get destroyed at the end of Endgame, so that, because part of the complaint I had about the Homecoming suit is that it was too high tech, and it's like that Iron Spider suit is even more high tech.
Yeah.
Like you see it in his room, it's like in like this weird little like power regenerating box thing because it's so advanced.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is like so out there, and ultimately I'm glad it's only in the movie for a short bit.
there might be some explanation in universe and why he's not.
Yeah.
Like
And-
some tech talk. Oh, I can only use it for 5 minutes every Sunday or something.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that if they started like introducing like there's a timer on it where it can only keep its power for so long.
Yeah.
And my fan theory from Homecoming I think has come true. Like the suit he gets in that paper bag is like doesn't have carrion or any of the advanced weaponry stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like a Spider-Man suit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, beautiful.
Yeah. It's OG Spider-Man.
And he has a couple other suits in the movie. As a comic book reader, I'm always attracted to the visuals. So, what did you think of like the stealth suit or the new suit he makes at the end?
I'm a big fan of both. The stealth suit I thought was rather cool. I mean, there's nothing techie about it. It's a black suit, and the fact that they called him Night Monkey.
Yeah.
No, that's not Spider-Man. That's Night Monkey. Hey, Night Monkey, Night Monkey.
I thought it was weird that the gloves were fingerless.
Yeah.
I'm like, that if he's supposed to be stealthy and he's leaving his fingerprints everywhere, that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does defeat.
But I dug the fact that he still had like the Spider-Man eye goggles and he picked them up if he wanted to like see eyes.
Yeah.
And the kind of advanced suit that he makes at the end. There's a lot of like Spider-Man comics where the way the artist colors it looks as if the blue parts are actually black.
And then they actually did that in this one.
Yeah,
Where they
so
made him black. Yeah.
I was like, nice and crisp. It looks enough like the, I think they call it the hero suit, like the Homecoming
Okay.
Civil War suit.
Okay.
Like it looks enough like that it still looks like classic Spider-Man, but it looks unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I was digging it.
Yeah.
I was feeling it.
Yeah. We gotta talk about those end credit scenes. Do
Well-
you want to jump there, or you got something else for me?
Well, we got some, so like just general, to get more spoilery about the Endgame stuff,
Okay.
did you feel like that kind of opening monologue with the school thing was enough to address the fallout?
I thought that was perfect. Because you start into it and you're like, okay, this looks a little bit. Oh, this is really cheesy. Oh, this is not good at all. And then you realize that it's a bunch of high school students who have put together a montage, and you realize this is exactly how it would look if a high school student put together a little montage.
Yeah, and they illustrate how like some students aged up and graduated, but then there's kids who are like 5 years younger than you that are almost in the same grade as you.
Exactly.
I thought they did a good job of, and again, like even the fact that Peter and Aunt May had to move because other people moved into their apartment while they were
Yeah, like your house gets foreclosed, or like, yeah, you're just
It
not.
was, and like you made the joke comment about the teacher, but it's like I'm sure there were a lot of situations like that where people moved on and married other people, and all of a sudden their spouses come.
Absolutely. I can imagine, yeah. I like how they showed it with the band disappearing in the snap, and then they have the basketball game going on later, and then like the band shows up in the middle of the basketball game and people are running into them.
And I love the way Mysterio takes advantage of this. He's like, this is a world where you'll basically believe anything.
Yeah.
Because these crazy things have happened.
Yeah.
And I thought there was another line he had that was so powerful. Is like, people only listen to you if you're wearing a cape and shoot lasers. Basically, they say like this has become a world where like the only people who have influence are like these superheroes because of all these crazy things that have happened.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so interesting, like good kind of commentary on like where the MCU world is at after all these crazy Avengers.
Yeah.
I was quite happy by it.
Well, he kind of makes fun of it too, because so the scene when they're in, are they in Prague when he hands over the Edith?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So he's in Prague at a bar having a drink, and Mysterio convinces him to hand over Edith. And then when Peter Parker walks out and he's like, "Oh, good job, everybody," and he talks to the scriptwriter and he says, "Who would have actually believed this crap that you came up with about an alternate universe and elementals? I guess you fooled Nick Fury, and he's the most paranoid guy in the world."
And that's another thing we'll have to talk about. Nick Fury.
They didn't actually fool Nick Fury. Yeah. Okay.
So there's this. I call it the AC/DC scene, and this is a scene in the movie that confuses me because it kind of resolves the issue I was hoping it would resolve with like this whole who's gonna be the next Iron Man, because it's Happy Hogan and Peter Parker on the jet.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're not gonna be the next Iron. No one will. And you really get the sense like, no, like you're your own person. You're not meant to be Iron Man. You're meant to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But then right after that, they do this thing where the back of the plane opens up and there's like a whole suit thing with the holograms, and you start seeing Peter Parker like moving the holograms around it and constructing
in
the
a
suit.
very Iron Man way.
And then he starts playing the AC/DC song, and it's like, okay, you just finished telling us that he's not supposed to be the next Iron Man, but then you very clearly are trying to draw an allusion to him being the next Iron Man. So like, what are you trying to say here, movie?
Yeah.
Like, are you saying that he's a scientist as well, so he can kind of do that? And they kind of poke fun at him. It's like, oh, I love Led Zeppelin, or it's implying, okay, like, yeah, he is an Iron Man because he doesn't understand the Iron Man stuff the same way. So
yeah, no, they kind of that was a little bit confusing. I would definitely agree. They're kind of trying to go one direction with it, but then the storytelling of that kind of the opposite direction.
Yeah, and like this movie does have consequences for Peter. He makes a mistake, a huge mistake.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge mistake that he gives away, and that's still confusing. Didn't he give out, like, he locked himself out at Edith, or he just transferred?
He transferred the ownership, so I guess he still has
shared ownership, I guess, of Edith.
Well, it's like he still is able to log in, but he's not considered the owner anymore.
Okay.
But Peter's whole conflict in the movie is that it's not that he wants to quit being Spider-Man, but he's like, I just want a break. I need to, like, a breather after all this crazy stuff that happened. Everyone's kind of like looking to me to be this person to step up and do more. So it's not that he's ignoring the responsibility of being Spider-Man. He's just like isn't choosing to accept it fully. And by the end of the movie, he realizes that essentially avoiding the responsibility of Spider-Man is a mistake.
Yep.
And so by the end, he's fully committed. And I'm like, okay, in terms of checking off things on my list, check the addressing the fall of the Endgame. Hopefully, as long as if this is the only follow-up we get, then it's concerned.
Okay.
And then in terms of the don't be the next Iron Man, it's kind of question mark. I'm not sure, because the way the AC/DC scene plays out, it leaves me confused as to like what they're trying.
I know. I really hope in future iterations of this character that he doesn't have to actually draw on like his access to Iron Man, because that's very
This almost feels like the epilogue of phase. Like, I can see why they call this a part of Phase 3, because it's like, if Endgame's the final chapter, this is then the epilogue of the story, where it kind of like shows you the literal fallout of all the. And then with Phase 4, what I assume is going to happen is they're just going to like start telling stories again. With I hope there will be again more connection to what's happened, but I could see them going ahead and just. So yeah, let's just get into those post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, okay, just a second before we do that, I didn't know that Spider-Man could get hit by a train and walk away from it. That's kind of crazy.
Well, it's not like he was unharmed.
I mean, he still walked away. He was hurt, but he walked away from it.
And then passed out. In the Netherlands.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was a great.
Yeah, you guys are so nice.
Speak excellent English.
Yeah, he has fair durability as a superhero, so that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. End credit scenes. Okay. Number 1, him swinging along the way with Michelle Jones.
Yeah.
And then probably the biggest spoiler is when Mysterio basically says, Spider-Man, like, I sent the Elemental back to another dimension, but Spider-Man brought down a bunch of Tony Stark drones to attack me. And I need to tell you this, Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker. And J. Jonah Jameson showed up, which is...
That made me pretty much scream in the theaters, because J.K. Simmons immortalized that role in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. We put him in the top best superhero movie performances as an A and a B type, not just a good performance, but a good representation of the character.
Yeah.
And I was afraid we were never going to see Jameson in the movies again, because everyone knew that you would never going to be able to top J.K. Simmons in that.
Agreed.
And I was so excited. Just the way he says, Spider-Man's a menace. Like, the way he says it even is like, ugh! And what I also appreciate is that it's not like he's just like literally like put on the costume from the old movie and now he's doing it again. It's like, it's a different take.
Yeah.
Like, the spirit of him is still there, but now he's like a web-based reporter and he's got a different haircut.
Yeah, he's bald.
Yeah.
Is J.K. Simmons in real life bald?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, nicer for him, because now he doesn't have to like put on the weird flat top haircut.
Right.
But anyway, I was overjoyed to have him back, because now I'm really excited, hopefully, that they continue and they keep him involved.
Yeah, because he's a fantastic character to have.
Yeah, because that's like a whole nother set of the whole Spider-Man's a menace thing is like a angle that the MCU hasn't really looked at yet.
Agreed.
So I was like, heck yeah, give me more of this.
Yes.
And then the reveal that, yeah, like, Spider-Man's identity is outed.
I know, which you can't really come back from.
Well, they did in the comics. He made a deal with Mephisto that made everyone forget about it. And
Okay.
He exchanged his marriage with Mary Jane.
Oh, really?
It's a very controversial story called One More Day
Okay.
from the comics. No Spider-Man fan talks about it positively anymore.
Oh, really?
Anyway, that's another thing. But
Sure.
part of me was disappointed by that reveal because I'm a fan of secret identities in superhero stories. And really, Spider-Man and then Daredevil on Netflix are the only
Ones that have secret identities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're blowing it up. You're taking away the only movie character with the secret identity. So there have been times in the comics where Spider-Man's identity has been outed.
Yeah.
Before, I mentioned Civil War. There's a very famous issue where actually he's fighting Dr. Octopus, and Spider-Man has a cold, so he's off his game, and he gets unmasked, and it's like, Spider-Man didn't fight like normal. This kid, this teenager, he couldn't possibly be Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one believes that he's Spider-Man because it's
It's just so unreasonable that this amazing Spider-Man could be a teenager or, like early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, there's an episode where Venom just kind of crashes in the Daily Bugle and says, "Peter Parker, Spider-Man," without any real evidence.
And no proof or anything like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not necessarily like proven that like Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Like, I'm sure that's going to be a major element of the next film.
Mhm.
God willing, there is one.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue is like this idea of like Spider-Man now has to combat fake news.
Yeah. This series getting into commentary on social.
Well,
events.
hopefully not too much, but
Yeah, okay.
it's a thing that happens a lot in Spider-Man stories where either the Daily Bugle or someone else like frames him for something that he isn't responsible for. I'm not even convinced Mysterio's dead, to be honest. I know like Edith said he was dead, but I'm like, I bet he's still kicking somehow.
He's such a good villain. He's still one of those villains that, like, how is Spider-Man? How is he going to get out of this one? You actually don't. It's a good way of getting out.
But certainly that moment when they reveal his identity and he's like, "What the?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Give me the next movie right now. I can't. I need it right now."
And Peter's response to that is incredibly good too. Like when Tom Holland, like his acting, it's just his voice.
Yeah. Well, you can see with his hand stuff.
The hands and the eyes and everything. It just looked great.
Yeah. So that scene did wonders to like get me more, as if I wasn't excited enough to see another Spider-Man. It's like, give me a no!
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons is back.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy. Anyway, the other post-credit scene was more confusing.
I know.
So
okay. You go ahead.
No,
You
so
summarize
the
it.
first thing that you see is that Nick Fury and Maria Hill are not actually Nick Fury and Maria Hill, but Talos and his wife
Yeah.
in the Captain Marvel movie.
They're Skrulls. They're shapeshifter.
The first thing I got excited, I'm like, maybe they are going to do Secret Invasion,
Yeah.
the story from the comics wherein Skrulls essentially impersonate a bunch of Eats and take over the Earth. But no, then they add in this thing with Nick Fury in space, and it suggests that Talos and his wife are working for Nick Fury, and
Yeah.
Nick Fury is like involved in some kind of massive interstellar Skrull operation.
Yeah. That one just left me a little bit like disturbed. Like, how long has Nick Fury? Well, Nick Fury went away in the snap, so he blipped back after 5 years. So he could only have been gone for 8. So the Nick Fury that we had that entire movie, it was all the script.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nick Fury.
But there suggests, like, I saw one person comments like, maybe the Maria Hill who we've seen since like the Avengers has been a Skrull the whole time.
Maybe the Nick Fury we've seen since. So Nick Fury may have gone away with the Skrulls in Captain Marvel and Impossible.
Yeah.
That would upset me. That would upset me a lot to know that the Nick Fury that we've known for the entire M's point has been Talos.
Yeah, I think the most logical thing would be to basically replace Nick Fury after Endgame.
Right.
Because there's a couple comments that the movie's like, "Where are the Avengers? Where are the Avengers?" And he makes that comment like, "I can't." I think that's meant to like set up the future because it's like people keep asking where the Avengers are. Like, what am I supposed to say?
Mm-hmm.
So it's implying that like something is coming for sure. And it actually got me excited because I'm like, I actually don't know what this means. This could mean any number of things. It's kind of open-ended enough that they probably don't know what it's leading up to yet.
Right.
There's a couple scenes like in my opinion, the best post-credit scenes in Marvel movies are ones like that where you just kind of get this random thing out of context. You're not sure.
Yeah.
Like the one at the end of Ant-Man. That's a clip from Civil War, you don't really know what they're talking about. It's like Falcon and Captain America, Bucky. And you don't know what these guys are talking about, but it seems interesting.
Yes, and that was a great lead into Civil War. I would say the one post-credits scene that I really enjoyed that is in Avengers when they're all sitting around eating shawarma.
Oh, that's so lame.
What? That was hilarious.
It was fine.
It was so good. And what's his face had to like shield his face.
Yeah, because he had a beard.
Because he had a beard. Yeah, Chris Evans, right? Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Your Easter eggery is good.
Yeah.
So anyway, all I have to say, like the scene with Talos, and it got me interested in, like, because I keep hearing in the news that like the future of the MCU is going to be more space based. So
Good.
Having a scene like that certainly establishes that things are to come in outer space.
Yes. Yeah. So I wonder if we're going to see more Kree and more Skrulls.
Yeah, more Captain Marvel stuff, more Guardian stuff. The Eternals is another movie that Marvel's been talking about. It's been announced.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can't speculate too much on now, but all that to say, like, it also helped kind of address the issue of, like, how did Nick Fury fall for this
I know.
this story about this guy from a parallel Earth?
Yeah.
To, like, know that it's actually, like, somebody pretending to be Nick.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, he was very convincing as Nick Fury. Like, the things he was saying is, like, it seems like things Nick Fury would say.
Yeah.
So...
Well, Skrulls are supposed to be very good impersonators, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved how it was the same, like, what's his name? Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah.
From Captain Marvel, like, reprising. Now, the two guys that I saw this movie with hadn't seen Captain Marvel, so they were, like, totally lost.
Yeah, that'd be very confusing.
When the Skrulls came, they're like, oh, I thought it was Star Trek all of a sudden.
Yeah, that would be very confusing.
So, yeah, that scene I wasn't nearly as jazzed about because it didn't have J.K. Simmons or the tease of a future Spider-Man movie.
All right.
But I think this is the point where we basically, like, have to, like, you know, if this is the end of Spider-Man,
Okay.
like, if the Spider-Man movies continue, but it becomes like Daredevil where it's cut off, I think they're at a good place where they can kind of tangentially, because they're setting up so much MCU stuff in space, they could easily have the next Spider-Man movie be like, well, Spider-Man's stuck in New York because there's this whole thing with his identity and he's being framed for a crime.
Yeah, so he has to take care of his business there, whereas all of the Avengers and as Guardians of the Galaxy go off and do their stuff in space.
Yeah.
Whereas Peter Parker has to stay on Earth. Yeah, they can part ways.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they've cleverly kind of done that in a way that should the agreement stop, they can continue making Spider-Man movies that are not related to the other movie. And that leads me into, like, my final thoughts on the movie. It's hard to say this is one of the best Spider-Man movies because this feels more like a Marvel movie, which I know is almost becoming a negative thing to say, like, oh, it follows this formula and it has the same kind of gimmicks or whatever. There are things about Spider-Man Far From Home that make it unique and stands out, like, from other MCU movies that have come out. But if you stack this up against, like, Spider-Man 2 or Into the Spider-Verse, those are really great Spider-Man movies because those films are made without any connection or ties to the other Marvel Comics characters. So they really have to try their best to just rely on the strength of Spider-Man as a character and the stories of Spider-Man to be successful.
Yeah.
Whereas Far From Home has the added benefit of basically being able to play in the sandbox that is the Marvel.
That is the MCU.
That is the MCU. So it's hard for me. I would say it's one of the best films with Spider-Man in it, and I would say it's still among the best Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the best.
Yes.
Does that make it?
I
Does
agree.
Make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So, yeah, do you have any final thoughts on the film before we back cookie it?
Ooh. No, man, I think we touched on all of it. I really wanted to talk about post credits because that was for me was kind of the so I really enjoyed.
So we both kind of said that we agree that the film balances the teen comedy romance stuff with the action, and it really shows the consequences in Endgame, and it really does a good job with its villains, and it was the kind of Spider-Man. I felt like I was reading a Spider-Man comic. I know I said it feels more like a Marvel Comics crossover thing, but it still felt like a classic Spider-Man comic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
as a fan of Spider-Man, I'm very happy. I gave Spider-Man Homecoming a very generous, like, 3.7.
We were pretty jazzed after that movie.
Yeah, I think we were on, like, some kind of high.
We were on a Spider-Man high.
Yeah, if I was to, like, retroactively grade that movie again, I would, like, probably put it lower.
Agreed. But I still love the movie.
Yeah. So, and maybe it's because I've been doing this podcast longer that I'm less generous with my ratings, because I'm going to give Far From Home a 3.6.
Okay.
Out of 4 back cookies.
All right. Fair enough. What did I give it last time? Do you remember?
We both gave it 3.7.
Okay. I would actually go a little bit lower than you. I'm going to give it a 3.4.
Okay.
3.4. Yeah. It's it passes the grade. It's mid-80s, but it's not
I think it's better than Homecoming. Okay, there you go.
I don't. I really don't. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one, if Sony and Marvel come to an agreement, it'll be Home for the Holidays or Home Alone. Who knows? I really hope that they actually drop the whole home thing, because
Yes.
they're really going to write themselves in the corner if they have to keep putting the word home in the subtitles of the films. So, having said that, Spider-Man Far From Home is now in theaters. Hopefully the things we've said have encouraged you to go and check it out. I think it's worth your time. And if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, I guess wait until you see Endgame, because unless you want to get spoiled for Endgame.
It just, this movie does not make sense without Endgame. Please see Endgame. Please see it.
This is normally when we go into the bat jar and look at our mail.
No bat jar today?
Well, there's no mail, so we don't go into the bat jar to look at our mail.
Okay.
But we do have some mail.
Oh.
So, or no, wait, no, we don't. Sorry, we do get to go into the bat jar to decide what we're going to talk about next time.
Next week. Oh, that's what I was hoping for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we still, clearly we need to do a better job reminding people how to get a hold of us.
Oh, how do we do that?
Well, if you can grab the thing out of the bat jar, that one.
Okay. If you want to contact the show with a question or an idea for an episode, you can send us an email to
batjarpodcast@gmail.com. Like, save it in your phone as a contact.
do it, guys. Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
TC Laugh, this is for you. Okay. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcast. Share our posts on Facebook and make sure to like our page, because we want everyone to join us inside the Batch Not Tandem.
Well, that was the thing kind of Asian John always intentionally screwed up.
Okay.
So if you want to continue that tradition of screwing it up,
He intended up
I mean,
every
no, it
week.
was totally an accident every time. Anyway, what was I trying to say? We also have a YouTube channel where our episodes go up, so if you are a person who likes to enjoy listening to audio podcasts while you're at work on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel, hit the notification button, so you'll be notified when our episodes go up there. And please, if you could write a review for us in the platform of your choice, because the more reviews we get and the more ratings we get, it actually helps us move up the kind of like the searches people do for podcasts. So it really helps us out. I know it takes a little bit extra effort to like open your app and say something about us, but we would really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Doctor, what do you probably appreciate?
I would definitely. We like feedback. Give us some feedback. Give us some love.
Yeah, and sharing the posts on Facebook obviously helps us people, because there's like 178 people who like our page, so that means there's 178 people who naturally like see our posts. But all the friends you have will see our posts if you share them. So.
Yeah. And I gotta say to all our listeners out there, I know that Pixel Patch was the master of puns. I'm gonna try to bring that back. See what I can do. He was a master of it, though.
Yeah, and well, you are a dad now, so you got the dad jokes running through you, right?
Ooh, they'll come. They'll come. Absolutely.
Perfect. So yes, Dr. What, it's time for you to go into the batch jar and find out what we're going to talk about next week. But don't look at the top. This is a thing people do when they're picking things out of the batch jar. They look in the batch jar. And it's like you're cheating because you're seeing the things that are potentially topics.
Okay. I didn't look at this one.
No, I know, because I was looking at you while you did it.
Okay. All right. We're good. Ooh, Disney Princesses and Virtue.
Okay, so that's a sequel to our Disney Princesses episode. And this is an idea that was kind of generated from that.
Oh, okay. Who's on that podcast?
That one was with Pixel Patch and Ms. Diz.
Ah, okay. I like that. All right.
So,
perfect.
Yeah, in anticipation, I guess, of The Lion King.
We're gonna talk about virtues that each one of the Disney princesses embodied.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wish I was on for that.
Yeah. So next week is Ben the Movie Buff is back. We'll see. He might actually not be back if his kid's born, because you have like a 5-week-old and his is to be born. Like,
yes.
The due date is Lion King Day.
Yes.
Apparently, so who knows? Someone will be here next week. Maybe it's Ms. Diz again. Maybe it's me. Who knows?
Can we? What would we name what would his superhero name be? Somehow related to Dr. Set, actually.
Yeah. Well, if you're Dr. What, maybe he could be Dr. Mini What or Dr. What Mini.
Okay. All right.
Dr. I don't know. Maybe is it wrong to call a doctor's kid? What is there like a name for a doctor's child?
Or unlucky kid? I don't know.
Anyway, listeners, there's the thing for you. What should our podcast name for Dr. What and TC Laughs child be?
That's right.
Come let us know what you think.
Yes, please.
So come back to the Patch Our Podcast next week when we talk about Disney Princesses and Virtue.
Heck yeah.
And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Dr. What.
Catch you on the flip side.
And come back if that looks infected.